Hi, welcome to Unequally Yoked Us Now. And I am Neal Winters.
And I'm Naomi Winters.
And we are with our good friend Gene from down the street from us. Just an hour down the street.
A little bit, yeah, just a little over an hour.
So, Gene, first thing I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about how we met, because you've had an outsized influence on our lives since we moved here to North Carolina. So anyway,
it was a pivotal moment, I think.
Yeah. But so Gene was the president of the Hickory Humanist Alliance, former sponsor / organizer of ReasonCon. I don't know if you remember that. And yeah, so Gene, tell us a little bit about yourself if you'd like.
Yeah, I was the founder and president of American Humanists, the chapter in Hickory called the Hickory Humanist Alliance, and then I had several podcasts at the time, as you know, you were on several of them actually, and was producing some and was hosting some. And then was doing ReasonCon on top of that. So holy moly, was just super busy. And then when the world kind of fell apart with COVID, it just kind of all went down. And I was like, okay, I guess this is my sign to retire.
Oh, you accept kind of signs?
Sorry?
You accept signs?
Or was it a book?
Boy, that's a slippery slope, ain't it? But no, I remember, all of it was very fondly. I loved doing every bit of it. I loved meeting all the people. But I specifically, you start off with the question of, when we first met.
Mm-hmm.
And I do have some funny information about that.
Oh.
So I figured out really quickly that when we met, you were pretty new in your discovery of your beliefs, or your, I guess, changing the beliefs at the time. You were trying to figure things out and trying to find a place, because all of a sudden your world had dropped out from underneath. Everything you was taught was, and correct me if I'm misspeaking for you, but I know my transition from the Christianity and the Pentecostals was incredible, and I know your transition was just as incredible. So when I first met you, you were like excited to find a family and to find us. And I was happy about that, but I was also like, wow, this guy, he's a lot. But then I had to back up and I had to reflect on, when I first started figuring out my beliefs and kind of started seeking more knowledge, I was exactly the same way.
Oh, okay.
So I was like that jumpy little boy that was ready to go and find out new things and discover everything. And you were like that. And once I kind of realized, hey, I was there one time, it made me really excited for you.
Oh, thank you.
Because I love to see people thirsty for knowledge. And we've talked about this 100 times. I do not desire to convert anybody.
Right.
If they have beliefs, that's absolutely fine. And I would never tell somebody you should think more like me. All I try to do, and trust me, I'm not going to say that I'm always super successful with not coming across like I'm saying, oh, you're so stupid for thinking that.
That way with me, you were amazing.
Yeah, I really tried doing that, because we were really embraced by a lot of different communities when the humanists first started. And one of the communities was part of especially the real accepting LGBTQ friendly churches. Now, they still had their belief. They still talked about Jesus every Sunday, but they were like, hey, we still would like to sit down and have a conversation with you. And that was what I respected. And I never tried to tell them, hey, look, you're stupid for still believing in this or whatever, because frankly, that's not what I thought. That's not how I felt. So I just tried to take it one step at a time and try to understand people, not judge them, not change them, just understand.
Yeah, like I was saying, you certainly did that with me. You were super curious and asked clarifying questions, but they were not judgmental. They were not trying to convert me at all. In fact, I think one of the best things I loved about all of our long discussions in the beginning was that I felt like we both walked away and were left with stuff to think about. Just like fun.
Agreed.
Yeah, it was just good. It was just really good, even though we totally have different views. How do we do
that? It's a good question, but I think it takes both parties to be involved in that. You know, it can't be an atheist can't go towards a Mormon or a Christian or a Jewish person in that mindset of, I'm coming at you judgingly. I'm coming at you thinking that you're completely wrong. And just because I didn't believe the same way didn't mean that, you know, I did not have the responsibility to give you the respect of your own beliefs. So when I started the Hickory Humanist, I was approached by the American Atheists, and because there was a chapter of the American Atheists in Charlotte at the time, and so I was kind of reaching out in a couple different directions because I was looking to build a community, and I thought there was a need for that community because there's so many people out here, especially in our area, which you guys know now here, but coming from where you come from, I'm sure you wasn't surprised. But we got a church on every corner, they say. Well, it's just about true. So there's a lot of that influence, and a lot of that influence to be part of that as a social club, as a social group. I've always wondered how many people actually go to church because they feel like that's the way to get the social aspect.
Right. Well, I've mentioned it before. That's the thing I miss the most about church is the social.
Right. And that's exactly why I decided to start something. But I decided first of all, the word atheist gets a bad rap from the beginning. It turns people off pretty fast. So I had always looked at and kind of admired the humanist philosophy. So when I decided to start a group, I was like, I think that's where we need to align, because there are Christian humanists.
Yeah.
There's a church down the street from me that is oh shoot. What's that church down the street from me? Oh man, I'm drawing a blank. And I pass it like 14,000 times a day. But it's a very inclusive church, and they were very nice to us and offered us space to meet and things like that. So, and a lot of them, even though they had this belief over here that a lot of people want to think is contradictory to humanist belief, they claim to be humanists as well, because there were so many things that we agreed on. There was really only one thing that we might have disagreed on. So what? So let's talk about the things we agree on.
Yeah.
And that's the approach that I took going to anybody. Going to Naomi and saying, hey, this thing that we don't agree on, let's put that on a shelf. I know it's important to you. I said, but let's put it on a shelf. Let's first, if you want to discuss that, that's okay, but let's first find our common grounds that we can agree on.
Yep.
And move forward with that. And because that's how friendships of people of various beliefs can be sustainable.
Yep.
Is because you talk about the things that you have in common. I see the same thing without speaking for you, kind of in your marriage. You guys have so much that you agree on. The love of your children, the experiences you've had together, that this other part is just kind of, okay, we can agree to disagree on that. Does not change that we love each other. Does not change that we're friends.
Yep. Yep. And
It's one thing that
Go ahead.
alcoholics and
sorry, go ahead, Naomi.
that's one thing that 12-step programs seem to have down, is that they encourage people to look for similarities instead
Right.
of differences, because it's super easy to just harp on those differences and get emotionally invested.
Right.
I don't know if you remember, we talked about things we totally disagree upon, and
Sure.
it was great. I love hearing new perspectives and just seeing your thought process.
Right. It was a lot of fun. It was just as fun for me. I mean, I was somebody who would go around to churches if they'd have me and do kind of the debates and stuff.
Mhm.
Not because I enjoyed arguing. I just enjoyed listening to other perspectives and sharing my perspective. Um, and tried to always do it in a kind and understanding way.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that, Naomi, because I definitely did not want to come across like that to you. I completely respected you, and I respected the fact that y'all were working so hard on what was going on in this belief structure for both of you.
Yeah. And do you want to talk? I do want to hit on one that. Well, there's a lot of other things I want to hit on.
Yeah, no,
Go ahead.
I wanted to talk a little bit about
We're on the same page.
how you were there for us after the death of our daughter. We had a lot of people surround us.
I would
but
say there were
you-
three groups.
You were our
But-
mainstay.
Yeah, but you
Like,
were the
let us
individual.
know. Yeah, you really did.
Yeah, you dropped I called you from the hospital after 5 minutes after I found out that my daughter died, and you were on your way from Hickory to Winston-Salem, I think.
I was actually all the way in Lenore.
Oh wow.
I was all the way in Lenore, and I jetted down 321. And for anybody that's not from around here, they have no idea what I'm saying right now. But Lenore is even further from where they were at the time than my home would have been. So I probably did break the speed limit a little bit getting down there. And the whole time, as much as my emotions, and I would never say that I came anywhere near experiencing what you guys experienced. But I am an empathetic person.
Yeah.
So when Neal called me from the hospital, I immediately went into an emotional state. And what was good about the fact that I had this drive to do is I was able to reason with myself. You're not going down there for you. You're going down there for them. And so by the time I got there, I tried to have myself together, because I had invested a lot of checking on you, checking on your daughter, seeing how things were going with her. I was in the loop.
Yeah.
So, of course, I cared what was going on. And, again, not comparing it to anybody else's trauma, but I was surprised, probably as surprised as you guys were, that it took that turn.
Yeah.
So I was shocked. So all the way down there, I had to keep telling myself, you've got to be there for them. And I did the best I could to hold myself together, but it was tough, but I wanted to be there. And I'm really glad I was.
So am I.
As hard as it was for all of us, I'm glad I was able to be there.
You watched our son freak out.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a memory I won't forget.
yeah.
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 Unfortunately, it's a memory I won't forget. But again, it's a life experience, and all of our experiences in our life make up our life. So it's just part of that.
Yeah. And just
Unfortunate, but
and I've mentioned this before, but there were three main groups that took care of us during that whole time: the humanists, the Mormons.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a movie, A Mormon Land, the Baptists at our barbecue, but that has nothing to do with anything. The humanists, Mormons, and our neighborhood was there. Like our neighborhood brought us meals for like a month after she passed.
It was amazing.
And that's that really is what I consider to be the humanist philosophy.
Right.
Is help people, help your neighbor, help your fellow human. Doesn't matter what their beliefs are or what their politics are. If they're in need, help them out.
Yeah.
Because we can all sit here and say, well, what would we want done if we were in that situation?
Yep. And
so,
yeah. Do you have another question? Because I have.
I forgot it.
Okay, so this gets into kind of something that I've been thinking about. In our first episode with Jen, we talked about evolution and about choosing why we choose to be good. I tend to subscribe to the notion that we evolved to be good, and I don't think we're good out of because it benefits us personally. I think we for the most part. I mean, there's outliers to the thing, but I feel like we want to be good and help other people. It's an innate desire. Like, what are your feelings about that?
So I kind of divide, I think, what you're talking about into two different words. You've got morality and you've got empathy. I think empathy was something that we have evolved into as a species. I think morality is a lot of times, too controlled by societal definitions. So, in other words, you can go to another country and something we consider completely immoral here is perfectly okay there.
Right.
But empathy is something that I think about the beginnings of our species and trying to take, understanding that if we don't take care of each other, that's not good for us either, because we are a community species. So when you have these people who gather in these communities, let's call them villages or whatever back then,
right.
They kind of develop this community, and the fear of that being disrupted a lot of times turned into loss of empathy for anyone outside of that community. So what you had was developed into a society defined morality.
Right.
And it's moral for me to take care of my community and kill that guy over there.
Right. I mean, I guess that's the thing about war. It's. I mean, that's
threatening your shelter, your relationship. I mean, all the basic things that most people value.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
Well,
why. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, that's why you've got so many nowadays. You've got so many communities fighting against each other. You look at.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go there and get canceled, but there's a couple extreme examples where I can think of where the layman felt perfectly moral, holding up what their leaders told them to do,
Right.
and while we on the other side felt perfectly moral in doing what our leaders to do, but yet you hear the story of the Battle of Belarus, I think, in World War One, where the soldiers sang Silent Night with each other from both sides of the line.
Right. Yeah. Because when it come down to it, the empathy was there.
Yeah.
But the conditioned morality that they had took them in the direction of doing what they were told to do.
Yep, and there's a whole episode on Radiolab about it, because the troops got along well for the next few days, and then the generals had to basically command them start killing each other.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and I think that's also why you have PTSD too.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
And more time you do things that are against what you would normally do. So people having to live with that's hard.
Right. I think that's exactly what PTSD is. It's the clash between your ingrained empathy and what you've been told the moral thing to do is.
Right.
Because they're not aligning. So that conflict within yourself is PTSD.
Yeah.
So,
and in that
but
sense, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you really wanted to get basic with morality, you can't really, unless you take this society. I always use Star Trek as the example. If you look at Star Trek, a lot of the society morality has been transformed into using the prime objective, so to speak, of conditioning everything the way they think and the way they act and what they do. It's not all gone, because obviously there's some war and things like that. But you see a lot more of empathy driven morality as opposed to society driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, think about that episode on the Orville where the character had a baby that was female, and their society, everybody's male, and Seth MacFarlane's character had a huge ethical conundrum about it, and that was a very interesting episode.
And I think that's exactly what the point he was trying to make in that episode was the difference between empathy and morality, and how somebody else's morality can clash with yours.
Yeah.
Not just your morality, but also your empathy.
Mm-hmm. One of our favorite episodes, at least for me, I shouldn't talk for you, but was our Christian couple, and Neal was mentioning how nice it was that even though they disagreed, they were very respectful, and it made it a lot easier to talk about things that we disagree on. And that's certainly been true for the podcast, hearing other points of view, just going with it.
Did
you have that when you were going through your faith transition, the us, them, and needing to move past that? I'm atheist, I'm so different. Or was that never for you?
Yeah. One of the things I kept explaining to people is the only thing that's because let me back up just a little bit. I was outed as an atheist.
Oh wow!
it was back in the junior days, the beginning days of Facebook, and I had reconnected with some old people from high school, and we were having discussions, and I was on this one board, and it was around the time of the Amendment One thing, I believe, the discussion about this was prior to gay marriage being legal, and you had these discussions about, well, we should lock it down in North Carolina and keep it from ever happening. And of course, I didn't like that, but I wasn't public about arguing against that.
Right.
So I ended up on these private groups and stuff, having discussions with people who were kind of willing to do it. Well, it wasn't anonymous. So one of my old high school guys saw me on there, saw what I was saying, and took it upon himself to message all my friends and family that was on Facebook and explain to them how I was bashing the Bible and I no longer believed in Jesus and blah, blah, blah. So when that come out, there was a lot of different reactions to that. And I decided to embrace it. I said, well, I don't have anything else to hide. You know, it's all out in the open now, so I might as well embrace it, which I'm thankful for now, because that's what was the catalyst of starting the American, or the Hickory Humanists, and just kind of kicking off all that I did.
Right.
But I had several discussions with people, and I said, I'm not different than I was a week ago before you found this out.
Yep.
I said, so you have two decisions to make, or one decision to make. There's two choices. You can either decide that I'm not who you thought I was, or you can decide that atheists wasn't what you thought they were.
Right.
That's your two choices. And if you decide that I'm not the person that you've known for sometimes a long time, that's your choice. And frankly, why would you want somebody in your life that only likes you because you're exactly like them?
Yeah.
So does that kind of answer your question, or kind of follow that line? It for me, it was, I guess it was a lot simpler, because nobody close to me, and I say close to me, but there was good friends that really struggled, and some of them I lost. Some of them, decided it wasn't worth it prior to 2016. But I bet you, once 2016 hit, I'd have probably lost them anyway. But we don't have to go there.
No, sorry, go ahead, Naomi.
I wasn't gonna say.
Okay, so one of the concepts that I was thinking about is good without God. Like,
Yeah.
I think there can be, I have Christians in my life who I think might hold the belief, and I've had people tell me this, well, you're such a good person, you're so nice and everything, you still must have a little bit of a belief without God still in you, and to be like that. And I disagree with that statement. Please expound upon my thoughts.
If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that, yeah, there are people, because growing up in Pentecostal church, we're taught that there is no good without God. That if you don't have God, you're automatically sinful. You're automatically of the devil. You're automatically a devil worshiper. How many of my people that I went to church with believe that you could only worship God or only worship the devil? There was no in between. There was no atheist. There was just those two options.
Right.
And, I had always felt like that, because I had been friends with people who didn't go to church and didn't espouse belief. But I always felt like that's not the sole determining factor. And again, it goes back to empathy and our species developing empathy and understanding. It can be as simple as, if I don't want it done to me, don't do it to someone else. Does that really take God to tell you that?
Yeah.
You know, before there was the concept of God, you're telling me nobody was good? There was no good in this world whatsoever?
Right.
Because you've got to look at even like Christianity, what, 2,000 something years old now, if that, not even that really. And then you got monotheism that's, oh gosh, probably 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, or the paganism stuff, which is probably older, but still.
And polytheism is probably older than all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you know, I've got an interesting thought on the evolution of religion too, but that's not the question we're talking about right now. But yeah, so good without God is understanding that people can be good with God, but does it really take God to force you to be good? Because if it takes a God or a belief in God or a belief that you're going to hell to force you to be good, are you really good?
Right.
Or are you just scared?
Like, why am I not, if the classic, why am I not murdering people now that I don't believe in God? Well,
oh yeah. Well, who is it? Was it Hutchins that said, people ask him, you know, well, what keeps you from going around and raping and... Oh yeah, that's right. It is. What keeps you from going around and committing all these atrocities because you want to? And he's like, I do it as much as I want to, which is none.
Yeah.
So it's this mindset that was drilled into people, is the only way to claim you're good is to believe this and walk this way and do this, and that's it.
Yeah. Hi, Neal here. Thank you for joining us for our first of 2 episodes with Gene, the former president of the Hickory Humanist Alliance. I hope you enjoyed this one, and we're going to get a lot more into his experience with the humanists and his experience with ReasonCon next week. Stay tuned. Have a great week, and see you next week.